Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 407. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to do kind of a Future's End catch-up, so to speak. We just start randomly talking about a lot of issues relating to the series. We also have a couple of listener voicemails that lead us into our discussions. We structured them a little differently this time around because of our chat. It seemed to make sense to have in each segment listener voicemail lead us off because it was talking about the same topics we were going to be discussing. So it's kind of a great overview of this event. So thank you for joining us. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. We're also part of the DCinfinite.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, it's that time of the month again. It's just the beginning of October, and we are going to be seeing what all the amazing deals are coming from DCBService.com. Jim, I know you're like me on that. This is that time where I'm like, okay, time to refresh. Let me see what I'm going to be able to get at a really good discount. Do those discounts, Jim, usually when you see something that's put on special, does that influence you to maybe grab a hardcover or trade that you weren't previously considering? It does for me when they're like those omnibuses, and especially the absolute editions.
Well, that's a silly question, yes. How many times have I called you saying, dude, man, I want to get this. Talk me down, man.
It is an interesting trade-off at the month because, I get some of the statues that they have on the site too. I'm a fan of the Batman statues that they've been releasing. But I've grabbed a couple other. I got a really cool Superman and Wonder Woman one that's coming. That's those mini ones. I'm not the full-blown statues. And it's the two of them like in kind of this really cool like flying embrace kind of thing that they did, and it's kind of cool just with the relationship because I don't have a whole lot of stuff with those two characters, so I've been trying to grab a few of those, but I really like them. I mean, the detail is phenomenal on those, so they're nice. But like you said, it's really hard to make a balance each month of, I want this, but, I've got to kind of watch my budget because I'm also getting this instead. So I love that, though. It's one of the nice things about DCB Service because could you imagine trying to do this without that?
Oh, God, no. And variant covers and, the selfies, the monster covers, the Lego covers. Mm-hmm. I jumped on all those things like, oh, okay, like...
Oh, do you when they have like the specials for those?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
I've got the selfie covers, I've got the monster covers, and the Lego covers that were this past month. Ordering. I've got because they do that nice package where they say bundling all the Lego covers together. Click. Okay.
That's cool if you like, because I like the covers too. I'm with you. I think you're actually. It's funny out of the two of us. I think you're more into the variant covers than I am even, because I tend to pick and choose them. But I will say this, I think you're right. When they do those bundles influence me a lot more to kind of grab a whole grouping when I really enjoy them. Like the selfie one, I didn't do the bundle for the selfie one. I'm wishing I did, because I really liked those covers. They had some really cool ones. I got a couple of them, but I didn't get the whole batch, and they were probably really impressive looking. They
are, actually. Those are one of the ones I was really glad I got, because I'm looking at you look at them like, oh, that's kind of neat. I do like a couple of them had some whimsical stuff. There was some that were, okay, yeah, but as a general, I was glad I got the full package, and I'm still trying to figure out in my head how I'm going to file them away, because initially right now I have them filed with the individual titles, but part of me is thinking about taking all those variant covers and filing them separately and keeping them as the bundle covers.
Okay. Yeah, I started doing bundles a while ago when I did my comic filing. You know what I do? Bundle crossover stories.
Right.
Instead of putting them under their series now, I put them under one or the other. So if it's like a Green Lantern, Green Arrow crossover, just for an example, that goes between a few issues, I put them together in either Green Lantern or Green Arrow. So that way, because for me, it's, you and I do a lot of rereading. So I like to have them in one spot to be able to pull them out to reread. So that, I don't know, I'm with you. I think I would bundle the variants together as a grouping now. So that way, when you want to pull them out, because the point of those is to pull them out and look at them. So you almost want them in a location where you can easily do that by theme.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff. And speaking of DCBService.com, over at their sister site, InStockTrades.com, they've got a bunch of sales going on because they just moved and they're doing all kinds of specials. But one of the specials, for example, is the Forever Evil hardcover, which was just recently released. It collects the whole series. It's a $24.99 hardcover. It's 42% off, only $14.49. It's a great place to go if you missed that collected edition that you wanted to grab. They got everything, and the deals are amazing. But like I said, they're doing special sales, and then they keep rotating them in anniversary to their move. So make sure to go check out InStockTrades.com. And Jim, we want to do a special shout out to Kickstarter for Apama, the undiscovered animal. We had Ted Sikora on our show a few times to talk about Apama. You and I were big fans of the movie Hero Tomorrow, and we had him on also to talk about the comic book. And now they're collecting the first 5 issues in a 160-page hardcover and all kinds of extras, which is really great. And check out the video. There's a video on it where they include portions of the Raging Bullets interview we did with Ted. And it was really great to see some acknowledgement of us and some other podcasts that have reviewed Apama and Hero Tomorrow. I really appreciated that they found some benefit in the time that Ted spent on our show. So it was kind of cool to see that. So definitely check that out. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
Hey guys, just Sam from Seattle here. Calling in, talking about your Features End podcast. Oh my God, I am loving everything to do with Features End right now. And I will be picking up every single crossover, whether I'm reading it or not. This whole epic has been just epic. What you guys were saying about Lois Lane earlier, I mean, whether she should tell us it's publish the story about Shazam being Superman or not. I'm kind of curious if she has any residual Brainiac effects going on from the Doomed crossover. If they're going to play off of that, or since Brainiac seems to be partnered up with Brother Eye in the situation. So, I mean, I'm waiting for something like that to pop up, maybe just to take a right turn in the huge series or whatever. And another thing that I just read just the other day was the Grayson Features End one-shot. And my God, I read that thing probably 10 times, and it's got to be one of my favorite issues this year. Just rereading it and going back and looking for the Clue Masters formula or whatever they called it. Just, oh my God, it was amazing. I just wanted to know your input on that issue, see if you picked up on it or if you reread it as many times. And they were just doing some fantastic things with all these crossovers. I just read Swamp Thing too, and that's going to make me pick up Swamp Thing. That was great. Oh my God. So keep going with the podcast. Congratulations on 400. Listen to for another 400. So thanks, guys.
I actually love his enthusiasm about the event because it really matches what I've been thinking about this whole thing. A lot of times, when these September events come around, the question becomes, was there a payoff to it? Like this one in particular, I don't know if you felt the same way I did. What I found is every time I was reading an issue, it made me excited to jump back into the book that it was off of, to see what is going to lead to that potential path. Because it's clear that there's some things on here that maybe could still happen. There's also other things that you're wondering what is going to veer them off of this path. Because obviously there's a story that's going to be occurring in between that's either going to put us in path A that would lead directly to this or path B that won't. So the anticipation that this is built for me on every title has been something that's been really a success of this in a way that I've really enjoyed all the September events. This one in particular has stuck out for me because of that anticipation that it built. I'm really intrigued by this. Like, I loved the villains thing last year because it tied into Forever Eve and all that, so I'm not knocking that. But there was a difference between the way those stories were crafted as singular pieces and the way this worked in making me think about, wow, this is supposed to be 5 years later. Some of these things could still happen, at least on some level. And that, for a successful event, I think that has been the success piece on this for me, the amount of things I want to see how they're going to pay off. Where are you at on this?
See, it's a weird one for me because, you know, creative wise, I'm getting some really good stories. Some of them I like more than others. You know, some of them, that same excitement you mentioned about wanting to jump back into the book, but it's not on every one of them. And in the back of my mind, the one thing that's just nagging me and just kind of it's keeping me from being, oh my God, this is the greatest. You know, it's that one little piece is, it's that question, will this be for nothing? You know, in the end, is there going to be, like at the end of the Future's End, the Future's End Weekly, is there going to be something that's going to erase all of this? Or is that how this is going to end? And I think it's not going to be until I get the final piece of the puzzle that I'm going to actually be able to 100%, you know, judge this as an overall story. I mean, you know, it's weird for me to say that because, you know, creatively wise, there's some really great stories that I really enjoyed, but it's just, I don't know, there's just that one piece that's gonna nag at me. You know, I gotta see how it ends for some reason to say whether I'm going to like this.
I guess here's the thing, and maybe we're seeing this a little differently. I'm not assuming that all of this is going to be tied up in the end of Future's End, and I honestly would be disappointed if it was. To me, part of the fun intrigue would be that I guess I would be disappointed if what you're talking about happens, where at the end of Future's End, all of a sudden this was wiped away. That to me wouldn't be a payoff. What would be a payoff for me is some of it could be tied up in a nice, neat bow, and I'd be really cool with that. But on the other hand, I would really like it if there were things from this that were left dangling that made me wonder, is that 5-year path going to take this character there? Because not everything is directly tied into the Future's End storyline.
Right.
It's a 5-year jump for a variety of the characters where they would be status quo-wise in 5 years. So, to me, I would be really disappointed if there weren't some of these threads that I was still left wondering, is character A going to wind up here? Is character B going to wind up here? And if not, what is going to change for them along the way so that path does not happen? That's the part where having the creative teams on a majority of these that are actually on the book is a real payoff, because it's leaving me wondering if they're planting seeds on things that they could do, but there's going to hit that point in their book where we're going to see the choice A, the choice B. You know, what's behind The Price is Right? Are you choosing door number 1 or door number 2?
And that's the thing that's you know, giving me that the haunting and the reservation. If they do wipe this clean, if they do have that wrapped up where everything and this doesn't matter anymore, that's where I'm going to have my issue. And that's why I can't say right now, I can't say yes, this is great until I see that final ending. When everything is said and done, if none of this mattered, then I'll be angry. Or if everything is just, you know, if they're able to resolve the whole Future Brother Eye Brainiac combo tag team, you know, and completely make sure it's not going to actually happen in the future and everything's going to be sunny, I'll be upset and annoyed. I like the fact that we had some of the heroes have a happy ending and others had a very not so happy ending. Some of them didn't do so well in the future. I like having those dualities and having the different characters go down a different path. But it's, you know, I got to see how they end everything before I say yes or no on it.
Here's the thing, though. Even with the scenario you're mentioning, that doesn't negate a lot of these books. There's a lot of books that aren't tied into the Brainiac Brother Eye team-up.
True.
So if let's say that happens and something is done to prevent that from ever happening at the end of this event. I mean, the weekly is what you're talking about. So let's say that happens. There's still many things that are on the table from the path that these books have gone down that could still come to fruition.
Yeah, exactly. And you know that's when I'll sit down and I'll look and see, okay, this kind of stuff can happen. Yeah, okay, I like this. You know, or that's why I say I got to wait till the very end before I make my final call. creatively speaking, there's some great stories here. So I'm enjoying what I bought, and I'm enjoying what I have, and I would encourage people to get if you're not normally collecting it, there's some really cool stories out there that, pick it up. There's some neat stories. It's, in the end, comic books should be, did you enjoy reading the book? Yes, I did. So you can say yes to success that way. But for me, looking at the overall Future's End story arc, yes or no, I got to see the ending before I say yes or no.
See, that's where we're different. And there's no wrong. First of all, let me clarify. You're not wrong in feeling that way. I guess your, I don't know if enjoyment's the right word, but your judgment on all of this, for you, is tied very heavily into the weekly. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're lumping it together. I'm not. So I think and that's not saying that I'm right and you're wrong. It's more of I read these as independent pieces. Except for there's like a few of them like Green Arrow and stuff like that are clearly tied into that weekly. But there's so many other ones that are going on right now that aren't tied in. That, like the Green Lantern books, for example. Those were great reads, and they're more playing off of events that are currently happening in the Green Lantern verse than they are what's happening in Future's End. Loosely, there's things in Future's End that are sort of affecting those books. But the majority of what's going on there is really playing off of current story arcs. So who knows where some of these characters are going to go down. So I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. I actually like the dual. I like that there's some that are tied directly in because, I do want that link to that weekly. But I did like that some of them didn't feel like they had to directly tie themselves to that event, if I'm making sense. I think if you're going to play in this sandbox, you have to do it in a way that makes sense to the books instead of forcing it into something that, like, doesn't make any sense. Why would this character A be affected by this? Well, they wouldn't be. They're out in space. There's a point to that, and I like that they made some of those choices. It's interesting. I would have loved to have sat down and been a fly on the wall when some of the planning meetings were going on in some of these books. I'd love to see how creative came up with some of their ideas. I thought it was a neat experience, and it was a very enjoyable reading month for me to go through and see them. There are things that you said that I'm like, I agree with that. If it was just kind of, whitewashed. Except I do want a resolution at the end of the Future's End weekly. I do want a resolution at the end of there. I think a mistake would be if you negate every single one of these titles. I think some of them are, because they're tied so closely to that event. They almost have to at least be summed up or resolved because of that event. But there's other ones that should not be resolved. Their path could still happen. And that part's intriguing for me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely with, some of these stories, it's... I kind of want to see them happen. Others, I'm like, I kind of hope that doesn't how he ends up, because I really like the guy and I'd hate to see him go through that. But there's going to be some that there will be in the flux, and as I said, that's the kind of stuff I do want. I want this more open-ended. I don't want this whitewash. I don't want this cleared up, but I do want a more happy ending for everybody. I don't want the human race completely decimated by Brother Eye Brainiac combo. So it's, I want the heroes to win, and, I want, McGinnis went, from the past, from the future to back to the past, and I want him to be successful in his mission, but it's, I don't want to. I don't want a clean. I don't want a clean. A clean. Just a clean ending. I want it a little dirty. I want it a little muddy.
I don't think there's any way it can be clean.
Well, that's what I'm worried about. That's why I said I got to wait to see the final ending. Okay. And I personally can't think of a way where they would have a clean ending. But I'm like, again, I got to see how this plays out.
Let's start talking about a few of the books that are some standouts there's so many of them to discuss. Let's just start picking a couple that we really enjoyed, or even that, maybe there were events that happened that were like, wow, this would be a good one to talk about. Jim, let's talk first about that Batman and Robin issue. And actually, before we do that, you'd mentioned that you'd like to talk about Grayson, and I wanted to. One of the things that we discussed with the Grayson Futures End issue is that when Tom King was on, he talked about coming back on to maybe talk about that issue. So I want to put that one on hold so we can talk to Tom and see if we can do like kind of a cover-to-cover with him. That'd be a lot of fun to discuss. We'll see if he's available. If not, we'll do it on the show, maybe on our next episode where we're talking comics. And really have a discussion about that issue, because I want to talk about it too. I dig it for the same reasons you do. So let's make it a point to do that. But this Batman and Robin issue, Ray Fawkes was the writer on it. And I loved what was going on with Batman because this war happened, and everything that went on with Batman, Batman broke his back. And we had this situation where there's a Robin now who's not Damian. I don't know who this guy is. I mean, I do, from this story, but we don't know where he came from. This has me wondering now. It's funny how this is another example of an intriguing choice. We know Robin Rises is going on. This is a good way to swerve us as far as, is Damian going to make it out of Robin Rises alive? Are we going to get Damian back? I don't know. Is this hinting at the possibility? And obviously the point of this was to hint at the possibility that you think we're getting Damian back for sure. You might be wrong.
Right, yeah.
Very, very interesting to take a look at 5 years in the future with this. I like this issue. Ray Fawkes did a really good job of capturing what's been going on in Batman and Robin, the overall themes and tones. We have that Damian clone that supposedly, was the one Batman was trying to figure out. Is this the one that killed Damian? And if it is there any way for me to reach this clone? Because this one would, again, come from my DNA, so there is a connection there. And I really like that this is a Batman torn. He has to handle this himself. And this is where Batman, whenever it's things that get emotional, this is something I really like about him. Batman does not handle this stuff well. A person who's balanced recognizes, and I think everybody goes through what Batman's going through at multiple points in their life, when things are at their darkest. For Batman, he tends to get here easier because of his own issues, since his parents, with the death of his parents, but also the path he put himself on as Batman. He leads a very intense, detached lifestyle from the camaraderie of others, except for a few close. He's also been betrayed so many times that he guards his emotions and very, very close to the cuff. It's very rare that he lets them out, especially when tragic, horrible things happen in his life. We saw it when Jason Todd died. These are events that have shut him down again and brought him back to the place that his parents, were at. We've seen in Batman and Robin issues when Damian was still alive, a Batman that was opening up more. This is a Batman who, because of the war, because of everything that happened, the battles with Superman, everything we saw in this, is a Batman who's become very detached again. I really dug this issue. I actually dug the whole, as we were talking about this before this, I dug the whole Batman arc that was going on in this. This issue I really was interested by because this got me excited for Robin Rises, which was it's funny, because we're in the Futures End event, I should be thinking more about Futures End. I love that this one got me excited for Robin Rises because I'm digging that storyline so much. I so want this to be negated because I want Damian back. and I really loved this issue. I don't know that I could wrap my head around this guy as Robin, but, ooh, boy, I really want Damian.
Yeah, see, I really dig this because for me it gave me hope for Damian. Just because you mentioned, setting up for the swerve and just everything that Bruce went through, I got this feeling in my head that we're gonna get Damian back. This was a glimpse of 5 years in the future. We're gonna get Damian back, but there's a risk of losing him again. And when that's, the whole, path that Bruce goes down. And, with the fact that we have somebody else completely different in the Robin mantle and as Bruce's partner. And, again, it's the Bruce protecting him, making sure nothing happens. And, just that whole process. And by the end of this issue, you have Bruce recognizing somebody else as his partner, somebody else as Robin. And it's that kind of that final letting go of Damian that we get at the end where, we're seeing, again, Bruce is not one for, emotional stability, because let's be frank, Batman is a little bit on the crazy side. You kind of have to do what he does. And to survive all he's survived as just a regular, normal, mortal person. He just keeps pushing it beyond a limit that any human body should and can actually handle. So seeing this breakdown, see everything he breaks down, seeing physically, emotionally break down, and then seeing the next generation step up for the final save, for me, it was like, this is something really cool. And this gives me hope for Damian, even though Damian is completely dead in the 5-year future. But again, who knows where the path is actually going to go. So I'm holding on optimism for Damian coming back, even though this issue would say he's not coming back.
Well, if you're taking these things as being locked in for sure.
Exactly.
And I don't. And I really like the fact that I don't take these as being, locked and set in stone. That part is really intriguing me about this whole thing. This is really, really, for me, a very, very fun event because of that. I'm constantly trying to figure out what's a swerve and what's not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and again, I think that's part of the coolness of the Future's End, that, if we keep this open and we keep this a mystery, we don't have, as I said, we don't have the whitewashing. We have it that some of this can happen, some of this won't. We've seen some of the big bad get taken down, so we don't have to worry about all becoming, cyber zombies. But guess what? There's still some negative stuff. There's still a war coming. There's still this coming. There's still this possibility. We may lose Damian. We may have Damian. Who knows? And that's where that's for me the strength of Future's End. And if that's how I want this to go down, where there is still some question, but in the end, you still get your rock solid. You still get Batman is a good guy, and he's going to fight no matter what. His body is completely shutting down, but he's still swinging. And just as he's down, just as he's about to be out, in comes Robin for the save. In comes the team dynamic that is Batman. I'm like, yes. And that was something I was like, yes. Because you knew he was going to come in for the save. You knew Robin was going to show up there, was going to eventually get there, even though Bruce was keeping him at bay. You knew it was going to happen. And I cheered when it happened, and I cheered at the end how it was a double punch by both of them that finally, was the final blow that took down the clone evil, Damian thingy.
The clone evil Damian thingy.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this was I liked the use of Duke. I like the idea we got this guy who's saying, hey, wait a minute, I've trained for this. So what are you doing to me? I've trained for this. This is exactly who I am and what I've wanted to do. I'm here. And how many Robins have we had over the years that have done just that? They have realized that they've trained. They should be a full partner. They're not being treated as a full partner. That's got to be incredibly frustrating to find out that the guy who you're supposed to be partnered up with and teamed with, the guy you've been training for, does not have confidence in you. Tim Drake went through this, and I thought it was a really intriguing part of his Robin arc when he was going through training. When are you going to trust, I know you lost Jason. I'm not Jason. And when are you going to trust that I'm listening and that I've got my own training? But here's the other catch. The best Robins, and one of the things, what stands out about Dick Grayson, what stands out about Jason, what stands out about Tim Drake, what stands out about Damian? And, the thing that stood out about them is they were unique. They weren't cookie cutter. They went through all the same training, and so they have a certain skill set that shows that they were trained by the Bat, to the point that they're recognized by assassins and things like that as being these, well-trained combatants who, have Batman's identifiable style is imprinted on them. But it's far more interesting the things that they adapt themselves, from maybe being trained by one slightly different person, from maybe having a different choice of the bow staff, for Tim Drake and stuff like that. Those things are all really cool, and they tend to separate one Robin from the other. So this guy, I really liked that he had his own unique flavor to him, even though I don't want him to be Robin. and I really enjoyed Duke in this. Yeah. I wanted to be Damian in the worst way. So that's really all Duke's got going against him, because as a story goes, I really liked this. I wanted to see him come save Batman. So when you were shouting out all those moments, I'm like, yes, I loved all that. It was great. I loved the interplay with him and Alfred, the whole Penny One thing where Alfred's trying to keep him away, but at the same time, Alfred's listening to the debate and recognizing that, well, he's got a point, and Bruce has got this thing on his spine, and he's one punch away from it being it. Alfred's very torn in this. I loved the writing because of that. I think really acknowledging the fact that Alfred wants to be the same supportive team member that he always is, but yet he's also torn, and we feel it as readers. I thought that was a really well done choice.
Yeah, and I was glad to see Alfred still alive. Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys that I always worry about, and because he is such a cool character and such a integral part of the Bat family, and how he is really needed for the team. So having him still around was something I was very happy for. And again, Alfred is that one constant, that one piece in Bruce's life who can, I don't want to say tell Bruce what to do, because no one really can tell Bruce what to do, but Alfred is that confidant in that Bruce will listen to him. Bruce will have those discussions instead of just doing it's my way or the highway. With Alfred, there's always the conversation, the discussion. And, again, I was happy to see him. I liked his role in this. And, to be a true Robin, you got to step up. You got to take that point in time where you say, this is it. This is my time. I have to do this. And you got to break the order. You got to go against the rules, and you got to, disobey a direct order, and at that moment. And this was his moment. Every Robin has had that moment where they disobeyed the order, and, instead of being just the sidekick, they became the hero. They had their hero moment, and it was a moment that needed to happen, and I was glad to see it happen here, because, again, it lets you know the future is, there's going to be something in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, this is really, really interesting stuff. They've done a really good job with this story of playing this kind of thing out. Did you read Batwoman?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I loved how that played off of, if we could just riff on it a little bit, the vampire story that's going on in Batwoman currently. It's funny, we haven't had a chance to talk about that book in a while. I love Batwoman. I think Andreyko's really doing a great job with it. He followed up a stellar creative team on that book, and he's doing a really good job of keeping things in play that I'm really enjoying. I love the role reversal with her sister.
Yes.
How now the sister's the good guy but I like that she acknowledges that, no, I wasn't brainwashed or anything like that. That was me, and I'm atoning for that. But that's something I'm always going to have to do. I'm stuck with that. I've come kind of full circle now. You brought me into the team, so there was a team Batwoman for a while until this vampire path that Batwoman had down. Here's the thing: what do we do now? Is Batwoman really a vampire? Because we don't know that. That's a cliffhanger from the last issue,
right?
Or what's going to happen to her present day? What do you think if she actually became a vampire?
Well, it'd be definitely an interesting route to go with her, because I was very worried, with, and again, I'm a fan of Andreyko, so I'm not worried about his skills as a writer. I was worried about the direction that the book was going to go, because when they started, they're ending the marriage. They weren't going to have that happen. I was like, come on, I was so looking forward to that, just the relationship of, the Gotham, lieutenant, the head of the crimes unit, and a vigilante married in the household, sharing their days, and just, what kind of stuff they each have to deal with, and each covering for the other and whatnot, and just the different type of way they could go with the relationship. So when that ended, I was like, what are they going to do? And then we start going this whole vampire route and all that. I'm like, this is kind of neat. Give her a little bit. She's always had her hand in the supernatural side of things. So continuing on that supernatural, then we get the 5 year later jump where I'm seeing she's not just dabbling in the supernatural, she's full on vampire mode. And it's when a lot of times with these vampire stories, it's you get the corruption of the bloodlust. You get the corruption of what it happens when you get, when you're full on turned and you're looking at immortality and you're not looking at life as this human in a bat costume. You're looking at it as a vampire. You're looking at people as a food source instead of family. And I loved seeing just that corruption. And you talk about role reversals with her sister. She makes the come around and she makes the final say. I want to see, I want to see her as a vampire, but I want to see her as a good vampire. So you think, in my head, in the beginning of the process, she's still going to have some of her humanity left, and she's still going to be, the Batwoman that we know. But as the process goes on, as the years go on, as war and whatnot happens to her, she may start looking at life a little bit different, and we could very easily get this 5-year later story happen, or who knows, maybe her path will be a little bit more positive.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how this goes, because I thought this was a very strong story. So that part for me really paid off. One of the cool things I really liked about it, I actually want to shout out artists Jason Masters and Guy Major, because there's this one scene where Batwoman, is hunting down Maggie Sawyer, comes crashing down to the car, and the glass shatters off, and the shattered glass becomes the panels.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a really, really good choice.
Yeah, and it's funny because you talk about just tough shoes to fill. Batwoman for me was just this wonderfully written story, but it was also visually. I absolutely loved the look of the book. So any creative team coming after this team that I had high standards on that book. They got big shoes to fill, and I'm seeing that continuing of the quality. It's not the same look because you can't really do the same look. You got to have your own style to it, but it's still absolutely beautiful. And this stuff you talk about there, I'm completely co-signing with you on just and it's the full spectrum of creation with pencils, inks, coloring, everything, everything, just that full layout, that full concept of artwork that we're getting in the book is something I'm very happy seeing. The high standards I have in my head for this book have continued.
Look at that team up that they had together. It was Batwoman, her sister, the Demon Etrigan, Clayface, right?
Yeah.
That was, and Ragman. What an interesting group! Like, what put them together?
Gotham heroes, all the Gotham supernatural type of heroes.
Well, but like the Demon can be argued that he's very much a gray area. Clayface is far from a hero.
But we don't know with the war.
Yeah, you're right.
I took it that within the war, because Clayface always has that kind of quality where he could very easily be a hero, but he's sometimes a little messed in the head. Sometimes he doesn't see things through. But you think about it, that war coming in, you had all these parademons flying in. I could very easily see Clayface saying, "You know what? Let's do this. This is my town. I'm not letting some outsiders come in and trash my world." And I could see him knuckling up and joining the team and being part of that. And even then afterwards, if you show him the respect that he's never gotten before. Because, you think about it, as Clayface, a lot of times he's mocked and ridiculed and whatnot. If you got this band of heroes who are saying, "Hey, man, you had our back, you're solid." You give him that respect, you give him that measure, and, you make him feel good about himself. I could see Clayface, crossing over and being a hero and saying, "Hey, I got to atone for what I did. I'm here with you guys." And maybe it would last, maybe it wouldn't. That'd be a story that, definitely over time, it would be a neat story to tell the redemption of Clayface, kind of like we had a sort of a redemption every so often. We have the redemption of Two-Face, where sometimes we get Two-Face on the side of the angels.
What are you going to do? Like pat him on the back and go, "Hey, Basil, great job." I know. I'm joking. Hold on.
That kind of stuff, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that. I could see positive reinforcement and encouragement, and something that Basil he never really got once he became Clayface. Because you think about it, he was so focused on the physical exterior of who he was before. When he lost that and became this clay monster, that shattered the ego. That shattered his identity. You give him a positive identity, and it could actually work.
Okay, I would actually buy into that. It would be interesting to see. You just basically said that Clayface needed a hug.
Yeah, he just needs a hug.
Did you get a chance to read the Booster Gold one?
Oh my god! I absolutely love that. And
that was one of my favorite ones.
Me too. I'm gonna say that. I don't want to say it's my favorite, but
I said one of them, and I meant it that way because there was a lot of really good ones. But that one was a surprise for me, I guess I should say, and it wound up being very high up on my stack because of it.
And that was the one that got me thinking about, are they going to do a clean slate? Because you get this whole dealing of where Booster hasn't really been around, and we've got these multiple versions of Booster out there. We've got the mentioning of the vanishing point, that final moment in human history and time, where his base is and what kind of damage could happen or what kind of good could they go from that. And that's where I was worried that they may use Booster's vanishing point as a clean slate protocol.
I see where you're going with that.
You think about it. And to be honest, that Booster Gold vanishing point could also be a way they could go back to the old universe as well, which I don't want to see them do. I like the new 52, but you could always argue that somehow through the vanishing point we can go back to the pre-Flashpoint stuff. So there's so much stuff they could do from Booster that it had me. I loved the story, and I loved how you see the different age and different levels of Booster, how he's fighting it. But there is that stuff that did enter my head. I'm like, I wonder.
Well, here's the one thing. As we were watching this, I guess I kind of took it as, to a certain extent, Booster, remembers, or one of the Boosters remembers the pre-52 universe.
That's how I read it, too.
Okay. I'm not nuts there. Okay.
Yeah, the one who had the less armory look to him.
Mm-hmm.
He remembered the pre-Flashpoint DC universe. And I took it that he was that Booster. The other Armorer one was the current New 52 Booster. That's how I read it.
Okay. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I took it that way too. I quite liked this story because, it goes along with the whole time travel theme. And the fact when you're traveling through the bleed and you're traveling through the multiverse and all that, how there's going to be, parts, if you're caught outside of the chain of events that have happened, you may be disconnected from them. But there's a part of his timeline where he came in sync with the timeline, I guess, if I'm reading it the right way. So the armored Booster is the future Booster. The one that's synced to our New 52, whereas the other one's the old version of him that didn't quite get synced yet. I don't know. If I'm making it gets very heady when you start talking about time travel. I loved this story because it opened up possibilities. And when I say open up possibilities, you got to start to see an exploration of the multiverse and some versions of characters like the Charlton Heroes and stuff like that. I loved seeing in the background Blue Beetle. It was cool to see him there, and that universe is Captain Atom, and the various traveling between the worlds. I'm always a fan of a geek out of that, and I was glad to see classic versions of some of those worlds still presenting themselves.
Yeah, and the commandee, or with the future Earth, the apocalyptic Earth, and just him like, hey, I remember reading about these files. And let me go. And then he jumps, and I like just the unpredictable nature of the jumping and just the story that was told. This was a great Booster Gold story, and then you have this massive once you start getting near the end, you realize, because when I first started reading, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be a fun Booster Gold story, and then the ending, you're like, whoa, there's something deeper going on here. Well played. That's one of the reasons this is one of my top, because I had this fun, hey, this is cool. Oh, look at that. Oh, hey, look. Yeah. And I'm thinking this is just going to be, for a lack of a better term, a fluff piece. But then you get the end, you're like, oh, no, this is very serious, and this is very connected to Future's End. So this is going to be one of the ones I think we're going to be revisiting the stuff going on here in the actual Future's End miniseries.
So this is going to be interesting to see what happens with the end of Future's End and World's End and Vanishing Point and all that type of thing where this goes. Because I think this one's very major. I don't think it's obvious to be continued in those two story arcs. This one's directly tied into what's going on in this story, and I quite like that.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And another one that I absolutely, again, another one of my top picks on the story. Mm-hmm. It was the Red Lantern one. I absolutely love that. And it was weird because when I first saw the cover, you see the guy Gardner in a Blue Lantern outfit. You're like, what? Wait a minute, guy has a blue? Hold on. And then you start reading through and just the whole concept of no more reds, and just everything they're going through and just the collecting of the rings and just that final, it was a nice, happy ending for all those who survived. And I thought, again, I said earlier I didn't want this cookie cutter clean slate, but I love this happy ending for these heroes, especially because you think of the nature of the Red, where these lanterns, they're tormented, and these are the especially these three, they're trying to rise above what the Reds were and do something good with it. And in the end, we see this happy ending. We see Guy is at peace, and of all the Green Lanterns, I'm going to say Guy is the best off of everybody because just you look at what happened to all the others. He's in a solid position where you're like, dang, Guy Gardner, is like one of the best of out there now. I'm like, wow, it was a great just evolution of who he is, an evolution of this book and where these people came from.
I did like that ending because it was neat that Guy was the one out of all of them. I also like his Blue Lantern outfit. It's like a variation on the classic Guy, with the jacket. It's kind of a variation on that. But it's also, he eventually becomes at peace. And you so want that for Guy.
Yeah.
That I just really enjoyed how that piece all played out. It was really cool to see.
And it's the process that he went through where he gathered all the rings and he spent time as all of the rings, and he did through that process. Because you think about the last Red Lantern issue before the Future's End jump, Guy had the red ring around his neck, and we asked ourselves, hey, what does that mean? And it means Guy was so in touch with the red, he didn't need to wear the ring. Eventually, he goes through all of the rings. He's able to do that. He's so in touch with the rings, he doesn't need to wear them, and he can have them all in his presence. And I thought that for me was like, dang, that is cool. That, again, they took that concept that they started back pre-jump and showed us the future jump where eventually Guy is going to go with this. Sinestro
was another one that you mentioned all of them. The rest of them, aside from the Guy Gardner one, the rest of them went quite dark.
Oh, God, yeah.
In Sinestro's story, we see that Sornik has become a Yellow Lantern.
Yeah.
And, obviously her story ends pretty badly from the fact that, she's vanished. But then, the story going down this path where, Sinestro's saying it's time for you to be able to end the story, the book, the book of the Sinestro Corps. And at the end, Sinestro becomes... a Black Lantern.
Black Lantern. Well, the Black Lantern. He becomes, the head of the Black Lantern Corps.
Well, which I love was a tie-in to the issue with Hal's book.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden that the ring was seeking out somebody and it sought out Sinestro. I liked how some of these stories did, like the others, and Aquaman tied in together. This obviously tied in with what was going on in Green Lantern with Krona.
Yeah.
Really good stuff that was going on in some of these issues. There was a lot to like this month.
Yeah, it's funny because, I felt, Sinestro for me, that was it was one of those where I want to see what happens after that because, does Sinestro, because the Black Lanterns are death and evil and whatnot. But Sinestro was always that kind of person that could skate the line. And how evil is he? You know, is he real evil? Is he only slightly evil? What's gonna? And I wanted to see what the Black Lantern Corps would be like with Sinestro at the helm, and see how much is it going to be a terror on the universe, or is it just going to be he uses the power to take out the bad guys, and does he free his people? Does he free the dead? What's he do afterwards?
I don't know. Sornik is one of the people following him.
Yeah, well, she died and she's back again. Yeah. So it's, you know, and John was the other one. John Stewart was the one that, you know, throughout the issue, I was like, man, this is, you know, just a hardcore, you know, the killing machine, John Stewart. Which, you know what, I do like sometimes when he opens up, and the ending with him, you know, going into, you know, the knock people, you know,
the purple, the indigo lanterns,
indigo.
Yeah.
I wanted to say purple. I'm like, it's not purple.
The knock people. He became a knock person.
Yeah, knock. Who's there? Yeah. John Stewart.
What I really liked about that was, again, this is a story that, if you look at where his issue ended, you know, the last issue of Green Lantern Corps, he was in a very dark place with Fatality.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about both issues as we kind of bleed through this? Because I really loved the Fatality issue that kind of led into this. Yeah. Because, you know, this poor guy went through this thing where, you know, he found out that the girl that he was dating, you know, who obviously things were going very far with, was a Durlan. And then he finds out, you know, afterwards that the real Fatality's still alive. And now that she doesn't have the ring, she doesn't have those feelings anymore. And she's been, all these months, she's been captured and imprisoned and tortured. And it's made her bitter again. Her sense of love, her sense of those emotions no longer exists for her. Is John right? Is she in denial? I find, like, if they don't do more with that story, there's a huge mistake there.
Right.
Because I want to see those two somehow, and I'm willing to wait and enjoy the story. I would love to see those two somehow find their way back to each other again. What an intriguing story it is. Because I get her point. I get what she's been through and all that. I love when they do stuff like this because it really plays kind of a head game with you. And it did it quite well.
Oh, God, yeah. I love John, and I love the relationship. And just, I like you, I want to see them together. But when the fact that, you know, she's sitting there saying, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was that ring that made me feel that. I don't love you. You know, I despise you. I just, you know, you see just John's heart just break. And I'm like, oh, God, John, man. I felt bad for him because, you know, it wasn't even just a relationship. There was just that deep love and that deep trust. This was the woman he was going to spend the rest of his life with. He would, if she would have asked him to turn over the ring, he would have. And that was the thing that, you know, there was that love and that connection, just that perfect thing that he had in his head. And he's finding out, you know, and, you know, she's telling him, no, it wasn't real. And part of me thinks he's you know, in denial. You know, when I was reading it, I'm like, John, you're in denial. She's right. It was the ring. But then there's that romantic inside me saying, no, John's right. The emotion was really there. Maybe the ring helped her, you know, get past her anger, but that emotion was there. They couldn't make her feel that. She actually did feel that, and the romantic in me. But then I go back and forth with the skeptic and the realist in me that says, I don't know. And then we get this 5-year later jump that basically tells you, yeah, she was right, he was wrong. She never loved him, and that just sends him on this downward spiral of just, you know, hate. I don't want to say hate, but it just coldness, and just He's very matter of fact. This is what I got to do. And you see him take the sniper spot where he just drops an entire small army without batting an eye or thinking twice of it. Because, you know what? he is that good. He is that focused. He is that powerful. And I love just seeing that power levels that, someone of John's intellect, someone of his discipline, someone of his, just that sheer will can wield a ring like that. I love seeing that stuff.
Yeah, that was to me one of the cool things about this whole storyline with John Stewart was seeing, and let me take it out of this storyline. In the past year, John Stewart has become a major MVP in the Green Lantern books. He's benefited from, sometimes a status quo change is a good thing for a book series. And what I mean is, it's not that I loved everything that came before. A huge fan. When the new creative teams came on, there's an opportunity to say, let's not retread what the great creative teams before us have done. Let's see what we can do to tell new stories, different stories, to stretch the creative legs of maybe some characters that need to be brought out into the spotlight. Boy, have they done a really good job with that with John Stewart. This is the John Stewart we've been wanting to read. And to see him in this, he's a power player. He's becoming one of my favorite Green Lanterns. And I don't mean that he was like somebody who was on the back shelf before, but I'm a Hal guy. I really like Hal. And then, a close second to him is Kyle Rayner, because I really loved Kyle's run. But, wow, John Stewart now his stories are just so interesting.
Yeah. I've always said John Stewart's is my favorite Green Lantern. Flat out. I love Hal and Kyle, and Guy is just flew through the ranks. I'm like, oh man, these are some great characters. But I always said John Stewart was the guy I really liked, because I liked the nature of him. Where Hal was the pilot, hey yeah, the party guy, there's that fun loving guy, and Guy was Guy, but John to me always had that discipline. He had that level of intellect as well as willpower, and it just something I was like, John Stewart for me was always a really cool Green Lantern. So when he starts rising throughout these books and they really start feeding him and just, really make him a pivotal part of this core, I was like, yes. And then it ends. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see him do that. I want to see John continue kicking butt.
Mm-hmm. That was something that I really enjoyed. The caller that called in the beginning mentioned that Swamp Thing story. And I really enjoyed that story as well. Swamp Thing was a book I was particularly worried about when Scott Snyder left, because I was really enjoying Swamp Thing. And, there's people who are listening to this that have been Swamp Thing's readers for their, whole life. And anytime Swamp Thing came out with something new, they read a lot of the Vertigo stuff. Maybe they went back to the Alan Moore time, maybe before then, and their relationship with Swamp Thing's like that. I never had the opportunity to really read lengthy runs of Swamp Thing. I read broken issues or team-ups, which I was more likely to read team-ups with Batman, back when they used to do the Batman crossover book, like Brave and the Bold and stuff like that. I would read, characters like Swamp Thing that way. This was really cool to see Swamp Thing in a place where he's at his final battle. This is really kind of it. I need to step up and vanquish the enemy. And you're seeing him face, basically the person who's been holding his long lost love. And how bittersweet is that? You're sitting there and going, okay, I finally reached my quest. I'm standing face to face with my deepest enemy. And you know what? I can't bring him down because of the fact that he's got the woman I love right next to him. I love that she steps up, because I think she has been a really strong, well-produced character in this. I like that she stepped up and said, I'm not going to be the thing that holds you back. I'm going to be the thing that adds strength to you so you can finally vanquish him. I love stories like that. And not only did she say that, she stabbed him through, which I thought was really, really great. What a tragic story that is. I'm a big fan of tragic love stories. I want them to pay off. I want them to be... but that's part of the bittersweet. I think John Stewart and Fatality fits into this category, where you want somehow for fate and storytelling to bring these two loves back together again. And I think that's very true in the Swamp Thing story.
Yeah.
I grew up watching that movie with Adrienne Barbeau, the Swamp Thing movie.
Yeah.
And really liked that movie. One of the things about that movie was, again, it was another kind of love story. It was, the monster falling in love with the girl. But you knew it was Alec Holland, and that there was somebody with a brain in there who, again, had this horrible thing happen to him. This story has kicked that concept to 11 for me because of how well developed it's been all the way through. I love that Charles Soule found a way to keep that premise going while developing a great supporting cast for Swamp Thing. So when you do an issue like this 5 years later and we see Swamp Thing all ready to go into battle, and again, where is his path going to ultimately lead him in the end? Back to these two.
Yeah.
And the artwork on this one in particular, the color work, I should really note, this is something that's been very true of the Swamp Thing book since the beginning. This issue in particular, I think because of some of the filtering that you've got to put for the color scheme, because of the fact that you're going into, these deep, dark worlds, really played off well in this. This is a very, very good-looking book, and I loved its unique nature because it shouldn't look like some of the other books that are out there because it's Swamp Thing, and it really just had a very nice visual style to it. I loved when he had the twig arm and stuff you see him, I'm doing everything I can to put myself back together enough as I'm decomposing here to make it to my foe to win the battle. There was something gripping at the end about seeing that. I thought that visual was a really good choice.
Oh, God, yeah. And I agree with you on this book. This was another one of those, you talk about just that bittersweet ending of him and that final battle for love. And again, it's, I was never a Swamp Thing reader really before the New 52 came out. And this is that title that over the couple of years that we've been doing this, since the New 52's been back or been out, I've gotten to know and love and appreciate these characters. And this is one of those books where I was like, man, this was a cool story. I would have rather it had a much happier ending, but I did enjoy this ending that I did get with Swamp Thing. I did enjoy how this thing played out. And it was one of those where you're like, yeah, this fits this title, this fits this book, and complete just co-signing on all the stuff you said about just the artwork. The Swamp Thing book is a book that really needs to have that vibrant colors, but it can't just be all bright. No, you got to have your bright, you got to have your grim, you have to have the different hues got to play into the factor, because it's not just the green. Everything is interconnected. You got your green, your red, your gray, your techno. You got the full gambit of all the different stuff playing off of each other and dealing and interacting with each other. And I loved, this was a great balance on that.
You know what book I really enjoyed? Batgirl.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
Because that wound up being, I'm assuming because the new creative team comes on, that was Gail's kind of epilogue. And I like that she brought in a lot of our favorite Batgirl characters, the ones, Cassandra you brought in, Stephanie. Just having an opportunity to really play around with that. She brought in characters from, recent titles of hers, but also from past titles. We got to see Misfit.
Vengeance!
Yeah. I mean, it was she does a nice job of recognizing her fan base, and keeping it accessible to, maybe that casual fan who knows her from Batgirl and isn't really aware of her other work. She makes that story accessible for that person, but at the same time, there's so many Easter eggs in there for the fans that have been reading all of her work all along. That balance I really appreciate, because you've got to find a balance of, you don't want to do so many inside things that you alienate a casual crowd. Huge mistake to do that. But that wink and a nod to your target audience, that's how you keep them. I mean, I read everything of hers. She's one of those writers that I get disappointed when I hear that I missed something and I start seeking it out. Because sometimes, she'll do a promotional book, or she'll get involved on an anthology or some kind of charity thing, or do something for a convention. And I try to seek that stuff out because I like her short stories. I like her long form stuff. I'm just really into her writing. And when you do stuff like this to your fans, where you do like kind of that little wink and a nod in a subtle way. It's a great relationship builder. It's very smart. It has fun. It's kind of breaking a different sort of wall down. I love the fact that because of what happened to her, she wound up in a situation with Bane where I want to be you. I want to train. This thing that she does to go back to Gotham as this different person, how driven she was there, was really cool to me. To see Barbara kind of come back in this route. It was a different sort of tact. Do I ultimately ever want to see Barbara go down this path? No. This was a great way to handle the fact, but what if, though?
Yeah.
What if this all happened to her and she wound up in this place? That was a very clever use of this book.
Yeah, I want to see Barbara have a happy ending. And when you look at just everything she's been through in the past, what's going on, just, I don't want her to go down this dark path. But as the story was being told, I was like, man, this is awesome. It was a great story being told. But again, this is my friend Barbara. I didn't want Babs to go through this stuff. I didn't want her to have to, do this or feel she had to do this or just, her punishment of herself or however psychologically you want to look at it. What the action she took or the action she felt she needed to do. I didn't want her to go through that. But as we're seeing this play out, you're like, man, this is cool. This is something neat. And in the end where we do see that Barbara's still there. She still is the hero. There still is good. And, this was, the connection with this and the connection with the Birds of Prey 5-year, jump. These were some really cool issues that, granted 2 different creative teams writing them, but there was that, acceptance, wink and nod, and just, you could see these were the same universes. And I was really happy to see when the crossover appearances, to see that, yes, this is still that same character. I could see where how these are connected.
You're alluding to a point in this story that I really loved. I love this dialogue.
Yeah.
He says if we try to evacuate the city, he will detonate the bombs immediately. I don't believe we will ever see each other again. I have something to say to each of you. Stephanie, you have the heart of a lion in every way that matters. You had the strength to resist the darkness where I did not. Tiffany, your day will come. Don't be afraid of your intelligence. I believe you will outshine us all. Cassandra, you came through hell and made everyone you met stronger and better. You are the person I most want to be. You are my sisters, my generals, and my only family. But you are also Batgirls, and that is my greatest honor. Wow.
Yeah.
There's points with dialogue. Then you build from this into a fight between Barbara and Bane. I mean, what a great build to a storyline. This is a great way to take a swan song. And this is where a good example of let's make a 5-year jump with this character because we know the new creative team coming on is going to do a different status quo for Barbara. Cool. It gives her kind of the luxury of saying, you know what? This would be if these events really happened in the future, this would be what my Batgirl would do 5 years later. Really cool way to handle this. I wonder if it just gave her some more freedom to do this kind of thing and a lot more wink and nods to fans because you can say, you know what, this would be my 5 years later. I know that with where Barbara's heading now, this is likely a path that she wouldn't have gone down. Cool way to handle this story. I don't know. I really appreciated this issue.
Oh, big time. I'm nodding my head and saying, yes, I agree with you. This was, if you had asked me, before reading it, what I would have thought about Bane, Barbara, like, what? No. But reading it, seeing it, just seeing, especially as we said, the ending there, we never really lost Barbara. She was still always there. And the stuff that makes her such a cool person and a cool character, the stuff that makes her, you look at her saying, yeah, that's my friend. Those qualities were still there in the end. And I was like, yes.
Now, can we talk a little bit about Aquaman and the Others?
Oh, God, yeah.
What a great storyline that was. I liked that being a 2-parter.
Yeah.
Talk about a tragic story. This was one of the ones where I don't like stories where I don't like Mira. And I got to be honest with you, like the first issue, I'm kind of like, okay, I get why she's being bitter. I guess I was hoping for a swerve here. As this is going on, I guess, Arthur might have been a goof and all that. I don't know what led Arthur down this path, but Mira, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's neat because in the end we get a resolve, but it's not the clean happy ending.
I like that.
And I really enjoyed the fact that it ends with head getting lopped off and a promise, hey, give me 6 months. 6 months to turn them around. If not, okay, then we'll throw down. Mm-hmm. And there was that pledge of it's not a peaceful, happy ending. We're going to get this period where we're going to show the world, hey, we have this air breather with Atlantean stuff, working together with Atlanteans and working with the undersea creature. We need to clean the ocean that got destroyed because we helped you. But, as you said, 6 month period, if they don't start seeing improvements, we're going to maybe see an Atlantean war come down the line. And the fact that there is that possibility of that happening, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. I'd be very curious to see where the story is going. I want to see, here's the funny part. As much as I like Roara and all that, I want to see Aquaman with Mira. I want to see whatever led them down this divergent path to not happen. Now, I'm not saying about let the war happen and all that kind of stuff. I'm cool with that because anytime you cause intrigue in Atlantis, I'm all for it. I like the idea that Mira's very independent. She's being well written in the book because I like that she's not the girlfriend who is behind the scenes and just kind of follows along with Arthur. There's times where she makes very independent decisions and she chooses not to burden Arthur with things, but also she chooses not to tell him things for the sake of protecting him. Recognizing he's the king, and if I'm going off and putting myself in danger, I don't necessarily want to tell him that because I don't want him focusing on me when he should be focusing on this. That kind of stuff has been really well developed in this book. This is a really well done, I'm talking about the main Aquaman title. Mm-hmm. I link both of these books together because I'm really enjoying both of them, but that's what's going on there. I love the others. I think it was great that they took this team that was put together in the Johns run and have really taken it to another level, especially when we see one of the family members collecting the various pieces of the artifacts and becoming the other. Yeah. That was kind of a cool ending to see the fact that, and I liked that his other team members, his other friends, didn't walk away because of that. They still stood their ground, even though they didn't have those artifacts with them.
Yeah, they can still throw down. So they're still part of this team. They're still part of it. But everything got focused into the grandson. And you kind of saw, the grandpa dying. And I felt bad but throughout this process, I'm like, oh, there's going to so be the passing of the torch. Now, I didn't see the gathering into one person and the grandson getting everything and being the other. I didn't see that happening, but I saw him taking over for grandpa. I saw him continuing on the legacy and continuing on the training and considering when everything was said and done, I saw that happening going on, but I didn't see how they did it. I liked just the fact that they all recognized and realized what needed to be done. And, you think about just how much power each one of those individuals openly gave up, for the greater good. And I thought that, for me, I was like, that is neat because they're like, this is what we have to do. And they all start passing on the torch to the one, other, to just that one character and have them use all that together. And that's what ends up taking, there can be only one. I love that ending with taking the head. I was like, man, this is cool.
Yeah, it was really, really good stuff. That was a great example of using two books that are, tied together, sort of. I actually like that they're independent normally, but you want to, in this time, they both be doing the same 5 year later jump, so it makes sense that they would be echoing each other like this. Really, really good choice. What do you think about Arthur's outfit?
Well, again, okay. With any of the changes and tweaks they did in the outfits, I didn't have an issue with it because you think about it, it's, modifications always kind of happen. The look's going to change, and it's just as time goes on, and who knows, maybe there was a storyline as to why he changed to that outfit, or maybe he just, You know, it just happened. I don't know what happened, but for me, when you see the jumps, I have no issue with the changing of the look, as long as we didn't change the character. You know, and we didn't change Arthur's character. And even Mira, even though she was the bad guy throughout most of this, it wasn't like she was just the jilted girlfriend or anything. There was a reason why she was against Arthur throughout this. There's a reason why she was against him on this, because you know, it was to save her people. There is that, you know, a lot of times when you get, you know, stories of these, you know, different countries and different people, and they have to take certain measures to protect themselves. They have to take those measures. And I like the fact that, you know, it's been 5 years now after the war. The ocean's dead. All, you know, the surface isn't helping them, and the only reason they ever would even think of helping them is to strip them of what little minerals and resources they have left. And she's just so bitter towards the surface that she's like, there is a clouding to her. So when this opportunity to bring back, you know, the dead king, to bring back Atlantis, to bring back everything, to make, you know, to save her people, you could see her stepping up and why she had to go through these different measures. And you can understand that character that 5 years ago would evolve into this. Now, I'm with you. I don't want to see her go down this dark path. I want to see Arthur and Mira together, because I do like that, you know, the king and the queen, and just that royal family that they, you know, bring together. I love those two characters together, but I can see how this would happen, and it doesn't take away any of my enjoyment and my how much I like this character to see her go down this dark path.
I liked Aquaman's speech at the end, because it's important every so often to give, you know, why do we think of him as a king? What is the regal standing? It's lines like this. Is this really what you people wanted? A horrific mass murder to solve your problems. I realize you're tired of life without food, medicine, and adequate shelter, but Atlan wasn't the answer. Violence isn't the answer. I'm offering hope and solutions that will lift us all. Work with me. Give me 6 months. So he set a timeline there. I love that part. Let's overcome our differences and pull together. We'll show the world our plight, as well as our best, so they can't ignore us. And then you start seeing it after a rally cry like that as a leader. You know, he wasn't sitting there saying, you know, you're just going to do it because I'm Aquaman and I tell you. You're going to do it because I'm making sense. I'm acknowledging everything that you're saying. And there's truth to some of the things you're throwing on the table. But here's our reality, and we can still step up. We can still be leaders. We can still do something about this. I really loved the way that this played out. Really cool dialogue for a leader. Good stuff.
Oh, God, yeah. That, again, the noble and the king. You mentioned just the, you know, the regalness and the regal nature of Aquaman. You know, that was something from the very beginning of his solo series, you know, with the New 52, with the reboot of him. That was something that always came out and, you know, has always been a strong factor. And I love seeing that he's standing tall. He's still there and he's doing it. And it's, you know, you think about it, his people basically turned their back on him, enslaved him, and were getting ready to execute him. You know, but he still stands tall. He still stands strong. He's not punish all of you, kill you all. No, that's not what a true king would do. He's going to help his people. Everything he's done has been for the betterment of his people. So he's, you know, trying to show them a different way, a different path. It's not about death, violence, and destruction. It's about hope. And I loved seeing that. I was like, yes, that's Arthur.
It's about dance. It's about dance. Something wrong with me.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
Hey, Sean. Hey, Jim. How's it going, guys? Long time no talk to. It's Brandon calling out of New Orleans. Been super busy. Life's been just crazy. You guys know how it gets. So it's been a while since I called in, but I had a couple of minutes today, and I had to call and talk about a couple of things. So you might get a lot out of me today, being it's been so long. But first off, I mean, we're in Futures End month, you know, with DC. Always have a little break there in September, an event month, as they like to call it. And the last couple of event months, you know, they haven't been bad. I love my comics, you guys know that, but they're not always. Some are really, really good, and some are not so much. This year, I gotta say, man, I am like hugely surprised by the titles I've been reading so far with Then. I mean, there's some really good stuff out there. Great ways to do a one-shots, a couple of these, like Action Comics. I'm not reading Futures End, the storyline, because, well, you guys all know me. I'm a Batman junkie, and they put 2 weekly series out at the same time. I had to choose Eternal or Futures End, and of course I'm going to go with Eternal, which I won't get into now, but man, that's a great title going on right now. I figured I'd pick Futures End up in hardback cover or something when it comes out. But anyway, Action Comics, great little one-shot about Superman. I have no idea why the dude's not being Superman, doing what he's doing. But the stories of what happened to these people without the powers, I just listened to your episode. It was great. Really, really great. But the ones that have surprised me the most, Detective and Batman and Superman. I mean, my God, Batman and Superman was fantastic. You know, we always see poor Bruce and his back in the future. I mean, it just seems to be no matter what happens, the dude's going to get that thing. You know, the whole broken back. It's bound to happen, apparently. Everybody wants Batman to be broken when he's old. But anyway, the way that they got to this, the always calling out to Superman but never making the call, great little story. Detective Comics blew me away. I seriously went into the story thinking I was not going to like this. It's one of the rare times where I've done that, because I usually like to go into any story pretty optimistic, but I was like, I don't know about this. And right off the bat, Batman gliding in on the hang glider, all that. I mean, perfect, awesome. Riddler, the whole connection those two had, the whole issue, loved it. And most intriguing of all, Batman and Robin and Batgirl. I mean, Batgirl, the journey she went through after the death of her husband and going undercover and getting to Bane and beating Bane and Bane coming back only to find out she never took his poison. She became better than him naturally, the way it is intended to be. I mean, it was a good story in the cliffhanger in Batman and Robin. I know I'm rambling, but I'm trying to get it all out because I'm just so excited. I mean, I really can't believe I like an event month as much as I'm liking this one. I don't know if DC maybe kind of heard the complaints of the last couple of years and people were not so happy what was, exactly going on, but this year they seem to have gotten it right. Whether they listened or it just happened naturally, I don't know, and I love it. I hope it happens like this in the future. But I really want to know what's up with Heretic and Batman and Robin. I mean, you got the I can't remember his name right now, the guy who was Robin, which was the little kid in Zero Year. Awesome little tie-in there. And then you got Batman and Heretic fighting to the bitter end, and then finally Robin helping, and they run the DNA test, and you don't get an answer. I hope we get an answer. I want to know what's going on with this. I see that he's in Teen Titans as well, which I've picked up and have not gotten to yet. I've also picked up, since I've liked them so much, I've picked up a couple outside of my usual titles. Of course, kept my regular ones, like Green Arrow was pretty good, but again, I'm not reading Futures End, so I'm not too sure what was going on with there, but we all got like triple fold again with Magus. Come on. I mean, it's just insanity. And they did it good. It was awesome. So, I mean, it's some good stuff. I'm glad that they did an event month that's actually working out. It seems to be in their favor very well. And as opposed to that, I'd actually like to talk about Batman and Robin. Man, I've heard you guys rant and rave about it. That is a comic. That is awesome. I mean, people can say they want Batman to be one way, this street level brooding guy, which is my favorite version of Batman too. I mean, it's everybody's. He's awesome that way. But that title and Peter Tomasi, who in my mind is so underrated and so under the radar most of the time, great writer and doing great stuff over there. The issue where they're hunting down Damien and Frankenstein and him are literally doing the swashbuckle sword back and forth to each other. I'm in my house by myself, raising my hands and cheering like, this is awesome, this is great. And that just shows how universal Batman is and how many different ways he can be portrayed and still be awesome. He is Batman. He is awesome. So, I'm going to leave you guys with that. It's been awesome talking to you again, and hopefully I can get some some normalcy in my life and be able to call regularly again. I still keep up with the show. You guys are doing great work. Happy you got to episode 400. Sorry I couldn't give a call then, but keep it up because I keep listening and I keep loving.
This is a great example of why I like voicemails. Like, I was geeking out with him. I liked his comments about how this event was different than the previous ones. I think that's important for them to do. You know, if you're going to keep doing these September events, it's a neat idea. It gets you kind of excited for September. But you got to make sure that you want to keep an ear out to what people are liking and what they're disliking. But you also want to say to yourself, you don't want to become too formula with these. You want to do something that feels a little unique and different. And I think this succeeded on that end. I don't connect this, other than the fact that it's a September event, I don't really connect this with the other ones. It's very unique in its nature, and I like that. I want to see, you know, if they keep this going, how creative they can get with making this month interesting and unique.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, just hearing him geek out about the different Bat titles, you know, I was a little bit confused. Is he a Bat fan or is he not? I wasn't 100% certain.
I love Brandon because of that. I mean, this dude, like, he's Batman happy like I am. His point was well met about Batman being one of those characters that people have a Batman that they identify with. And he was talking about that he likes that dark, brooding Batman. That's the one that he identifies with. But one of the things that he likes about the character, and I so connect with this, he's very malleable, you know, to changing times and to changing tones. You can make slight tweaks to where his life's currently at and really change the type of Batman you're dealing with. The Batman Inc. storyline, everything that was going on there, gave an opportunity for us to see a Batman that perhaps is a little bit more accessible, a little bit more friendly. You know, he was more of a jet setter around the world, and I like that. That was a really interesting choice with that storyline. So I'm glad that they had a chance to explore that. Now we're getting a Batman that seems to be kind of a hybrid of the two. Because of what's happened to Damian recently, but especially when you're getting into this event right now. Batman's gone through some dark times. I like the fact that when they portray Batman in the future, there is some sacrifice to his body because of what he does. I think that's pretty critical. Yeah. That's something that, you know, he's human. And I think that's the time in his life when we want to see that he's human. What's more impressive about him, what makes him Batman, is most people would be just kind of like, you know what, I put my time in, my body can't handle anything more. Not him. He's like, you know, let me get some cybernetic thing on my back and start kicking butt. The Batman Superman issue was really well handled because I didn't know if they were going to, you know, handle this in one of these titles, but I'm so glad they did. What was Batman and Superman's relationship like and where? Major philosophical differences over how to handle a war, which you're dealing with two characters that they're comrades at arms. They found a mutual level of respect, but we know they work very differently, which means their politics are going to be very different. And what happens when your politics end up entering into the equation to the point where it's at a war? And you're having philosophical differences on how to handle the war. And blame starts getting thrown around about whose idea is responsible for some of the things that happen or wasn't strong enough to stop things that happen. This relationship here I thought was really brilliant in this. Really good issue.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's, you know, the one question I was hoping they would kind of give us a little bit more info on, but they didn't. And in a way, I'm glad, but in a way, I want to know what was that final straw that broke the camel's back. What got those two to go to blows? And you think about the Superman Shazam issue, where they talk about Batman gave Superman one final mission in the war, and that's what ended the war. And that, to me, is probably what caused the final battle, whatever that mission was. Because that's the thing that drove Clark away from humanity and stopped being Superman. That's the thing that was that final wedge between these two people. And part of me wants to know what that mission was. What did Clark have to do to end the war? And you know, what did Bruce send his friend to do? And that's you know, I do want to know that, but part of me is like, oh, I kind of don't want to know. I just want to leave it lingering in my head.
And what do you do to yourself, like giving somebody that mission? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah. because we've seen, Bruce say, you do have to make the sacrifices, but there is that human side of it. And I loved after that battle, after Clark went away, Bruce tried some reconciliation. Then the battle with Metallo, with that final breaking of the bat, where Bruce is sitting in the hospital bed, and he just goes, Clark, and he actually does calls out to him, but obviously Clark doesn't answer. It's done. Mm-hmm. And I love that human moment, especially because it was Alfred who basically is the one who told him, hey, you've never actually asked, called out to him. It's you got to reach out to him, and it was something I liked seeing. Those again, the Batman Superman title is a great title that I've enjoyed a lot of different stories they've done, but especially when they look into this relationship between these two heroes who are they're so similar in a lot of factions, but there is a difference in them. There is a little bit more of darkness, and there's a little bit more optimism in Superman, a little bit more darkness in Bruce, and it's kind of it's always that dichotomy that I always like about those two.
I thought you said there's a little more optimism in Superman.
Yeah,
and I thought you were going to come back and there's a little bit more Megatron in Batman.
Well, Clark's a little bit more country, and Bruce is a little bit more rock and roll.
That's now they're Donnie and Marie. I love it. Yeah. At first I was going to say Batman's Donnie, but I think inside there's an inner Marie. It's as we're talking about the Superman Batman issue, it's probably a good time to talk a little bit about the Superman issue as well with Billy, because you start to develop a role when what's happened to Superman has happened, where you're like, Superman is this major figurehead, and you've got a world that needs hope, and they need that symbol of hope at a time where Superman can no longer provide it. So Billy takes on the mantle, and you get so caught up in being somebody else, there comes a point in time, to talk about being a method actor.
Yeah.
There comes a point in time where you forget how to be yourself. I loved Lois Lane's role in this issue, and in Billy's life in general through all this. The leading to Billy actually taking on the role of Shazamming and going, sometimes I just got to be me, which is really funny considering when he says Shazam, he becomes this adult, with the wisdom of Solomon and all that kind of thing. But I like the portrayal in the New 52 of Shazam. I think they've found a sweet spot for how to keep this concept current, because it seems to be a problem that they have with Shazam and Captain Marvel, that whole character. They don't know how to find a balance usually. They either skew a little bit too classic for some people, which I like the classic, So for me, I'm always excited when I get to see the classic Fawcett City and all that. Or they go so far off the path that it's unidentifiable as the character. This variation really does a nice job of finding a balance, because I feel it feels very current and contemporary, yet there is a classic feel to Billy. And it's very well handled in this. I'm really enjoying him in this. Johns did a good job with him in JSA. I thought there was a really good modern portrayal of the character as well. And I think this has continued that trend of evolving this character into something that feels very current, while at the same time not alien. I grew up with this character. I love this guy. And I think they're really doing a good job with him right now. This issue was a great example of it.
Oh God, yeah, and it was the Superman issue was just absolutely fabulous, because I loved how we get just the return of Shazam in that title and how everything played out. Very light history on Captain Marvel and the whole Marvel family and Shazam, and he's another one of those characters. As the New 52 is going, I'm growing with my understanding and knowledge of him, and I see that cool factor that everyone always talks about, just where you got this little kid in the superhero body, and I started recognizing some of those factors behind. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's some neat stuff going on. And the Superman issue was also kind of directly tying into the Future's End story, the weekly story. So I really liked seeing those connections. And it's funny because when I read comics, 9 times out of 10, I'm just reading it silently. But there's certain characters and there's certain times you get a cool dialogue that you gotta say the words out loud, and you just gotta, go through and actually hear the actual vocal words. One of the things I find myself always doing is whenever Billy is powering up or using the lightning bolt, I find myself saying out loud Shazam. And I'm not just reading Shazam, I'm giving a boom Shazam when I read it. And usually a lot of times there's a fist pump in the air as I'm doing it. And I can just imagine if someone's like outside my window listening to me read, they just hear out of nowhere, this booming Shazam and whatnot. And I get caught up with Billy and certain characters. You get caught up in the moments. And this issue, I tell you what, he's like, you know what? I'll never let them forget who Superman is, but I gotta be myself. And I'm like, yes, yes.
Yeah, that was a very good choice in that issue because you want Billy to have a moment where he's identifiable. And that was really great because the reveal of it being Billy was shocking to me. And I mean, in a good way. It wasn't one of those things where I was like, oh my God, it's Billy. But it was a cool choice. And I didn't see it coming. And afterwards, I was kicking myself going like, well, why wouldn't you look at the archetypes in the DC universe who could really take on that mantle? It was cool that it was Billy. I also liked in that issue the handling of Black Adam.
Oh, God, yeah.
Taking the Phantom Zone projector and putting Black Adam away, really recognizing, on Superman's end, it was
and I'm a big Black Adam fan. Mm-hmm. I like the Black Adam who isn't the maniacal villain who would sucker punch, Captain, who would sucker punch Shazam in the middle of this fight. But I gotta say that was really cool, just because how they played this character out. I like the Black Adam who is the leader of Kahndaq, who basically had the mindset: you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. You come into my kingdom, I will destroy you. I really like that powerful Black Adam, but even I agreed with how they played that, and just because what they've laid out for this New 52 Black Adam, how again it fits the character, it fits who he was from the beginning through to now, and I was like, that's a good time for him to do that, to do that sucker punch, for him to try to steal the full power of Shazam, to try to take it from everywhere. I'm like, I like that.
I did too. I think that was one of the things that really worked out in this issue. And this Future's End world, the fact that you're playing 5 years later, the nice part is we are left with so many questions that can't be filled in. Yeah. There's a 5-year gap. And the mystery of what could lead them down. Here's the thing. If this gets resolved, how do we know that if this is repeated again from our timeline that it won't be worse?
Yeah.
That's an interesting part of the storyline. Or, do they veer off and it never happens at all? I don't know. I'm very interested to see where this story goes because of it. So many characters are affected in a way that makes perfect sense. Yeah,
because you think about there's so many different, if the war never happens, if Earth 2 never falls, and they never have to flee Earth 2 to Earth 1, bringing with them Apocalypse, bringing with everything that's going on, bringing everything that happened there. Will that change the future for Earth 1? Will that change our future? Will that, or if they do come over, what if they did this? Or if, the Brother Eye, Brainiac combo never actually happens. How will that change things around? There's so many different variations, that little tweaks that could change and prevent this from happening. But even if some of this stuff does happen, you're still going to get some of these evolutions. You're still going to get a broken Bruce. You're still going to get possibly a non-returning Damian. You're still going to get this great Arkham uprising that we see in Detective, and a end to the Riddler, maybe. I don't know. You still can possibly see those, even if this great war never happens. So there's so much 5 years from now that could actually happen.
You know what book I really enjoyed the playoff of and the build to was Superman Wonder Woman, because a lot of times Wonder Woman's portrayed as this warrior, which she should be. She comes from a warrior race, and I'm glad that they do that. But I love when they remind us that there is that side of her that makes her this beacon for peace. And I thought this story building to that where, she really is analyzing herself and her actions and who she is. And I think we've seen a lot of this evolution of her identifying with herself through her relationship with Superman, where she's starting to get to know sides of her that she wasn't overtly aware were there. And that led her to the point where we can see her at the end as this bright, shining beacon of peace. I almost thought for a second that she was becoming a White Lantern, because I love life. I was like, and I saw the glow. I'm like, wait, are they making her a White Lantern? But at the end, we got to see her, evolve into this god of peace. And I thought that was just a really cool ending to that storyline. It was a neat story.
Yeah, and again, that was another one where the story was spread over the 2 issues through the Wonder Woman and through the Superman Wonder Woman story. And I think I really liked about it because you think back to just with us and throughout the history of the show, the Gail Simone Wonder Woman run that we so gushed over because it wasn't just about this powerful Amazon woman. She was a queen. She was a princess. She was just this ambassador of peace and hope and all these positive, views and just this, person of virtue. And when the New 52 wrapped around, it was a younger version of her. She was more, of a warrior. Then we get to see the softer side of her through the Superman Wonder Woman story. And we see this evolution. We see this growth. This was a great capstone to who I always, in my head, I always think of Wonder Woman as. She is a warrior, but she's not war. She is, just that ultimate statement of you have to sometimes fight for peace. You sometimes have to, exert some effort and actually throw down if you're going to fight for and preserve peace. And that always is Wonder Woman, to me, to her core. So now we finally get she is the god of peace, not the god of war. I was like, that is awesome.
World's Finest was good because I wanted to see how Power Girl and Huntress wound up in their fate. We saw Huntress was actually already captured previously, but we also got to see this new Power Girl, which we got to see introduced, and we didn't get to see much else of her afterwards. This is a great chance for us to see her in action with our power, with the Power Girl we've been reading since the New 52, kicked her back in. This is a book. I'm glad. I know next issue they're going to be going back to doing like some of the history of Batman and Superman in the Earth 2 world.
Yeah,
and I'm cool with that. I'm interested in seeing that. But I'm really going to miss Huntress and Power Girl as a monthly book because I've been really enjoying the buddy cop relationship between the two of them, and with them both being from Earth 2, that kind of exploration. I am going to say one of the things I'm enjoying greatly what they're doing with Earth 2 right now. I think the story is interesting and how it's tying into World's End and this Future's End kind of thing that's going on. But I'm a little sad too because that's been such a unique world. Yeah. And one of my favorite books every month. That's on my top 5 list, Earth 2. When I look at this and World's Finest and what's going on there, I'm very worried with the choice they made for that world. Because do you see I hope I'm wrong. Do you see a possibility of that world being back after the end of this?
See, that's what I think is, on one hand, I think that's going to be the big change that comes out of Future's End, is Earth 2 is not going to fall. And part of me thinks that's going to because that's going to be the main catalyst. Because if you think about it, if Earth 2 never falls, we'll never get the people coming over to Earth 1, and we may not get the war. Because the war happens because Earth 2 fell. If Earth 2 stands tall, we're not going to get the parademons coming into Earth 1. So if we don't have that, a lot of this stuff is going to clear up and not happen the way it did. So, but I think that's going to be, in my head, that's what's the change. And I think with the title of World's End, maybe it doesn't actually end. Maybe Earth 2 doesn't actually end, even though the title is World's End. Maybe that's kind of like the swerve or the leading into it. Does it actually end? Are they able to save it? And we could get a very easy there could be a crossover of the Earth 1 heroes going to Earth 2 to save the day or help out. This may be, again, you think if we're starting to see some connections, some crossovers of Earth, of some of the Earth 2 people, of Earth 1 people knowing about Earth 2, maybe we can get something going that way. Instead of them escaping from Earth 2, we can fortify that. Or I don't know. It's, again, I want to see how all this stuff plays out, because there's a couple ways they could save everything, but I don't know, because it's looking pretty bad over there.
So you're reading it as World's End as opposed to
exactly.
World's End. Yeah.
Well, that's the optimist in me hoping that's what happens, because like you, I like Earth 2. I like that story, and I would like to see them continuing of Power Girl and Huntress, whether they're on Earth 1 or whether they're in Earth 2 or however they play it out. But those are, again, that buddy cop stuff you talked about between those two was just some absolutely wonderful stories. And the Heroes of Earth 2 was a great, I liked having a different Earth that they were dealing with, and that we could see things just a little bit different, a little bit tweaking here. So,
what did you think of the Teen Titans issue?
You know what? Teen Titans issue, second and third read-through, is another one of those things that gave me hope for Damian, because that heretic is different than the one we see in Batman and Robin. Because he even mentions how there's multiples of him. And got me thinking, what if that is the real Damian, but dressed up like heretic, because he's playing out the hero role. The Teen Titans are basically they are becoming heroes, and they're not recognized and endorsed because most of them are from Earth 2. But guess what? Part of being a vigilante hero is sometimes you got to operate outside the law, but you got to do what's right. And we're seeing this team that is doing what's right, a little bit different and, not exactly clean, but you know what? I really dig that Teen Titans. And part of me is wondering, is that actually Damian dressed up as heretic and just doing his own thing? Or is it possibly maybe not the Damian, but maybe it is someone who has the Damian characters, that has some of the positive that Bruce instilled in him?
I liked seeing Tempest, which is kind of a throwback. Heretic, the Earth 2 Kid Flash, and this one Animal Girl. That was really awesome, and Clarion. It was a nice little team up, and just kind of with how the world had changed. The Teen Titans, obviously, we know they were disbanded because they died, from the stuff.
They quote unquote died.
Right. Well, yeah. But I mean, this would leave open for an opportunity for a newer version of Teen Titans.
Yeah.
I was glad to see that. How are you digging that book so far? Like, since they've relaunched it?
I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Again, it's a solid title. I don't know why. I don't really know why they had to relaunch it. For me, this is just a continuation of what we had before. So they could have just continued the numbers, but with a new team or a new status or whatnot.
Yeah, I wonder if it wasn't just for the purpose of, kind of relaunching it for the purpose of getting it out there that, it's a new team. Yeah, maybe to just kind of drum up. I'd be curious to see if it drummed up sales numbers for them doing that. Beyond the first issue, because the first issue usually it's a positive.
Yeah, and I tell you, I enjoy it. I was enjoying the stuff we had before. I think the new Teen Titans, going forward, it's got more of a, I want to say it's more of a positive look that the team is having, and they're starting to have a more, that gel. But it's a gel that built throughout through the last run. So it's as I said, it's a continuation of it, but there's that comfort that that between them, it's that team cohesive unit that I really enjoy in Teen Titans. It's there's definitely a solid story going forward on that.
Cyborg Supergirl, and Captain Comet. Interesting to see how that all played out. Seeing her with her dad, and having to overcome what was going on with her. That was a good choice of Captain Comet. I'm a big Captain Comet fan, especially when Starlin was doing those miniseries and stuff. Yeah. It was great to read about him. I was glad to see him start making a larger appearance in the New 52. I hope this use of the character. I hope the character shows up again, because I thought it was a really good use of him in this story. And obviously, with it being 5 years later in the future, it'd be cool to see some of his his quote unquote first appearances in the New 52, because he's an interesting character.
Yeah, and I did like Cyborg Supergirl. I thought that was kind of a neat way to, show her, what happens to her in the future. Again, it's one of those where I don't want to see my friend go through that, but again, it was a cool story, and the connection with her and her father, and just how everything they laid the groundwork before, it felt like a natural flow through for her to go that route. And it's something that, again, it could very easily a little tweak here, a little twist there, a little bit less darkness and a little bit more light in the world, and she wouldn't go that route. And she would stay on Earth. She wouldn't leave Earth. She would, keep focus there, and, maybe we're not going to lose her to the dark side. But in the end, she still is who she is, and she didn't completely throw that away. And so she does have that redemption moments at the end where, we do see our Supergirl. We get to see that cool hero step up and, do the right thing. So it's one of those bittersweet endings where you get some moments, but you're like, oh, she went through the ringer to get to this positive moment.
You know what book I'm really going to miss? Batwing.
Yeah.
Because that Batwing Futures End issue was the last one of the series. It was another book that, very similar to Batgirl. Batgirl's not ending, but, it's the end of that creative team run. And Batwing was a title that I enjoyed the first run of it, and then when Gray and Palmiotti took over, I really enjoyed what they were doing with Lucius Fox's son.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they had a chance to give this book a 5 year later epilogue, where we got to see, this guy who we'd seen become sort of estranged from his family. But then, with what he went through with his sister towards the end of the series, we started to see him kind of coming back with them. And events led him to get further fragmented and separated from his family again. But in the end, that was another one where I'm like, I'm really glad they gave this guy a good ending. Yeah, it takes him 5 years to get there. But I was glad to see him have that chance with his family to kind of see. For us as readers, I thought it was a good closure on this book. And it's what I'm baffled why they're canceling this one, because I guess maybe sales numbers of the issue, I don't know, or it's just direction where they've got a lot of Bat characters coming out there now, and I could see them trying to pare them down. But I was really into this series. I thought that when Gray and Palmiotti took it over, they've been doing nothing but building their version of Batwing into a very interesting character. So I'm going to be really sad to see him go.
Oh, yeah, actually, I got to completely co-sign, because I really digged when they first introduced the character. I was like, oh, man, this is neat. It's a completely different, non-Gotham related Batman. I was really into it. Then when they shifted it to Luke, I was like, man, I like the differences. And as I started growing into him as the character, and it was just that last couple, probably starting after the Gotham. That crossover series where everybody was given the happy juice.
Oh, Gothopia?
Gothopia, thank you. That issue on, I really was like, man, this is a great character. This is an absolutely one, and I was just like so hardcore into Batwing from those issues on. I really so like, man, I want more, and I'm like, it's getting canceled. Oh, you can't do that to me. I really like him now. So, it was like, I was glad to, how they handled his 5 year jump.
Yeah, I was too. I think that's really important. You've got to give readers closure.
Yeah.
And I think it builds loyalty. Gray and Palmiotti, I follow their Kickstarters. They do quite a few of them, of creator-owned work, which is unique stuff that you wouldn't be able to get published by like a DC, for example. And I just find that their storytelling, I mentioned Gail Simone earlier as somebody who, is a writer I follow. Gray and Palmiotti, they had me at Hawkman. I know I mentioned it many times on the show. As I really enjoyed what Robinson and Johns did when they kicked the series off. It was really, really great. But then Gray and Palmiotti took over that series and they kicked it up again. They have this knack for taking interesting concepts and making them unique and different. They're under the radar too. Actually, Brandon's call earlier, where he was talking about, we've talked about on the show many times, Peter Tomasi doesn't get his acclaim. Gray and Palmiotti as a writing team do not get their acclaim either. They are fantastic. I can't think of anything I've read of theirs that I haven't liked. I really dig their work. Their miniseries that they do have been really stellar. This material is fantastic. Their creator-owned stuff I've really been into. I don't. For anybody listening to this, if you've never read any of their work, do yourself a favor and grab something, because their stuff is really, really terrific and well done. They're doing the what is it? Star Spangled War Stories with G.I. Zombie.
Right.
They're doing that book, and I'm really enjoying. It's Grant Palmiotti. I'm really enjoying that book again.
Oh God, yeah, and they're on that list of creators that if I see the name on it, I will pick it up. Even if when I read the blurb on it, I'm like, I shouldn't remotely be interested in this. If it's got their name on it, I will pick it up. There's a couple creators that if they're attached to it, I'm there. No matter, it's an automatic buy, and it's even an automatic at least 4 to 5 issues before I make the decision. Because I know it's going to be good. I know I trust them as creators, and it's again more to any title they can get put on. The more titles they can get put on, I'm happy with. I'm sad to see them leave the one, but I get a different title to continue the story. So it's all right.
I liked his 5-year. That's Star Spangled War Stories.
Yeah,
that 5 Year Later was a really great story. It was very contained. And it was another one. I'm glad that all of these didn't have some dark ending. Like, I didn't mind the ones that did. Like with Hal Jordan, we'll go back to, because we didn't really talk about Green Lantern, and we can jump back to that in a minute. That was a dark ending. This was not. It was great, and I love the way that they use G.I. Zombie. The whole problem is this is a zombie who's going on missions for as a war hero. And I love seeing this guy do things like, as a zombie, you can jump in through the front cockpit of a plane. I mean, all that stuff really works. It's a very creative use of the story. This, for me, I don't want to say, I'm be careful in saying that it's my replacement for Jonah Hex, because it's really not, because Jonah Hex stands on its own. But I'm glad to see them, Gray and Palmiotti, have a unique title going on right now in the DC universe, because I was such a fan of what they did with Jonah Hex and how they kind of carved out their own area there. And I'm hoping Star Spangled War Stories gets that same kind of vibe going. I'm hoping people are trying this. The Future's End issue is really issue 3. I mean, that's the 3rd issue that's been released. Issue 1 and 2 came out first, then they did this one. So I highly recommend to people, if you haven't checked it out and are looking for something different, this is really different, and it's cool.
Here, you mentioned with them being on that list of creators, that's, initially with me in War Stories, I like it more based in reality. I like, if I'm going to get a GI war story, if I'm going to get a Star Spangled, I would rather read something about, an actual realistic type of comic, because I think for me that's something that is missing in the comic book universe. I know they've had it, they brought them in, they last a little bit, then they go away. So I may be in a minority of people who want to read realistic, army stories, but because of skills, I am enjoying, GI Zombie. I am enjoying it because we do have a solid creative team working it.
Here's the funny part. If they called the book Crazy Zombie War Stories, would you have approached it differently?
Probably, but it's that notion of the Star Spangled, just this, and I'm like, if you're going to do a war story, why don't we do real ones? Like, actually, because there's some amazing stuff that have happened throughout the history of, U.S., British military. You pick a country, every military organization has some just simply amazing stories that I think they could take and put into comic book format, which would be, something kind of like, for me, I think that'd be really a neat, thing to show, because it was actual real people doing this. It wasn't superheroes. It wasn't anything like that. These were actual normal, everyday human beings who actually did some of this stuff. And there's been, just throughout history, some amazing events that you're like, how did they do that? How did they survive that? There's no way any person could survive. Well, guess what? Not only can they, here are the actual people who did that. And I always thought that would be a neat comic to go through. So the whole concept of G.I. Zombie goes the opposite of what I always thought would be a neat story. But because of creative team, because of I'm getting a good story, I'm like, you know what? I like the writing. I can't complain about it. I can't say it's bad. Even though it goes against what, in my head, something I would really love to see, I got to say it's good.
Dude, it's a zombie that when he blows up, he puts himself back together. Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I like it. Yeah. I'm enjoying it.
It's a great book. It's funny. I was laughing because when I saw the title of it, I'm like, oh, Jim's going to have an issue with the fact that it's not close enough to reality. He does have now his haircut, Jim. You got to give him credit for his haircut, right?
Yes, yeah. I'm giving credit, and as I said, and to be honest, G.I. Zombie could get away with a non-regulation haircut in my book. I wouldn't have an issue with with long flowing locks on him.
He would, Jim.
He's G.I. Zombie,
Jim. He would, Jim. He would. Yeah. He's a little more dedicated to it than you are.
But it is funny though, because when I first saw. I saw the title before I saw the creative team. And when I saw G.I. Zombie, I'm like, what? Oh, man. Then I'm like, oh, Graham. Oh, okay. Let me get it for the read.
I like that, when you're dealing with somebody who's a coherent zombie. Yeah. So he has to deal with the same zombie urges that, any other zombie that we would see in horror movies has. But he's also got emotions and compassion and all the things that we normally see. That's where it's interesting to me. He just happens to have this zombie affliction, which is a major pro in his line of work, but it's a major con in trying to be normal, quote unquote normal. And that stuff I find fascinating. I love seeing him have conversations where you see, he's this pasty faced guy who's got he's looking after his friend Carr and after everything she went through. There's an interesting sort of relationship and dynamic there that I think is fun.
There was that movie, Warm Bodies.
Yeah.
Just you think about the early stages where that zombie starts going human and he's thinking, say something. I
love his. Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was looking at the part where they come crashing out of the plane. And he takes the guy's head off, as a way to deal with the fact that he's a zombie and puts it in a bag, which means this guy is technically still, and probably always will be, alert, right?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, you assume if brain isn't damaged, they'll still get the moving eyeballs and the still acting. Mm-hmm. The active until the brain is actually damaged. I'm assuming going traditional zombie lore.
Yeah. So it's a fun book. It's interesting to read this and see where it's going. I'm glad that they did the 5-year jump. It was kind of cool.
I was surprised because they only had 2 issues.
Yeah, but it was cool to see it. Well, Grayson ran into the same boat.
Yeah,
and I'm glad to see both books played in the sandbox. And like I said, we're not ignoring Grayson.
Yes.
I want to reach out to Tom King because we had mentioned when he was on that we'd like to have him come back for that. So I'm going to save that issue. And we can talk about that with Tom. I wonder if that's hard. This would be something we could talk to Tom about. If it's hard when you've got an event like this, only a couple issues into your run. Or if that's a good time to do it because you can kind of tease a future for the character.
Yeah.
I thought it worked well for this Star Spangled War stories.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was just another really cool story for the guy.
Mm-hmm. So it's good stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I know we've kind of... we're not going to be able to hit every book, but is there something that we didn't discuss that you're like, hey, I'd really like to talk about this book? There's a lot of good ones.
I know. It's one thing a quick comment I want to make. Phantom Stranger, absolutely love the ending. We got a nice positive ending for for the character, and it was just it was a great way to tell the story, and a great way for his final redemption. I was very happy to see that we did get this final redemption for this character, but still will get a continuation of the Phantom Stranger, but he's following his own path. He's following a different way, and I really liked how this story played out and how everything he went through, and that final moments. I thought that was a really cool story, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's been a book that another one that I've been really enjoying. We don't get to talk about very much. The Justice League books had some really good tales in them as well.
Yeah. Here, quick question for you.
Sure.
Detective Comics. Mm-hmm. It was a great issue. Again, that was an awesome Batman Riddler team up where Batman has the final last laugh on Riddler. Is that the end of the Riddler, or do you think he's able to make it out?
If you go by the way comics work, he's able to make it out.
Yeah,
because he's the Riddler. But you're supposed to be left thinking that he couldn't. I mean, if it was continuing off of that story, I wouldn't say that'd be the last time we'd see the Riddler.
Yeah, because he does make an appearance in Catwoman, but the Catwoman story very easily could have come before the Detective Comics story.
I would say it does. The Catwoman actually starts to approach that new status quo. What do you think of her in that role? Like giving up being Catwoman, but being more, I guess, Selena Kyle, boss of the mob? Boss
of bosses. Hey, that was cool. I liked it because, again, one of the great things about her as a character is she's not just this cat burglar. She is this very strong and awesome female who, she's like, hey, I can dance with the boys just as well. And it's time, to step up. It's time to do this. And for me, that was a very nice progression, but also she still held on to her roots because you think about it, her 5-year con that she was running, on all of them, where she became the boss of bosses and she was funneling all the money, and then she fakes her death and disappears with all these billions on billions of dollars, retires to a nice tropical island with some drinks. And I was just like, this is perfect. This right here, it kept her, she still had that strength of character that makes her really cool, this is a really cool character, but she still does hold to her primary core that she is the world's greatest thief out there. So guess what? She's got both the best of both worlds in this issue. I really dig the jump.
I liked the Justice League story that was going on, Justice League of America, or Justice League, I should say.
Yeah.
The storyline where we got to see some characters from the future and some characters from present day teaming up together and meeting with Captain Atom. Because this is a character, Captain Atom's a character we really haven't seen since this series, which we were both big fans of. So it's great to see him and see how... I like when you see a character that has that kind of omnipotent power, how that eventually starts to divorce them from our reality because their sense of how to look at things is drastically different. And I was glad to see Captain Atom make an appearance in this just because it was a cool character. I'm glad they're acknowledging some of these characters that they've created in the New 52 that for... whatever reason their book failed or, didn't get out there. Because there's fans of those books, and I'm one of them, that really was glad to see our friend back again.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Big time.
What is it with Etrigan? And, I mean, dude, Justice League Dark, dude's got game.
Hey, I'm like, all right, my man, Mm-hmm. And once again, though, you think about just back to Demon Knights,
mm-hmm.
where, there was always that, the game he was playing. And how much of that was being used, how much of that was him actually, his game that he had. And, it's, you wonder what's going on with, what's going on. I don't know, man. How much of that was faking, keeping Etrigan appeased, and how much of it was true feelings and emotions?
I also wonder, too, it's funny we mentioned that. I also wonder how much when we see more of a good side of Etrigan, that's influenced by the host, if I'm making any sense.
Yeah.
Or if it's really, because Etrigan's a very complex character. I don't know a whole lot about the demon. I've read certain issues of the demon in its own book, But nothing that would make me any form of expert. I've always liked what I've read with him. I read some of the John Byrne series, Blood of the Demon, too, when he was doing that one. Garth Ennis did a cool run on it, and I read that because I was a big Garth Ennis fan. But I don't have a strong history with the character to know if there are major, other than he's the rhyming dude. When he comes in on things. So it's interesting to see him in this role. I think the New 52's done a great job of making that character. It's a great way to give a sense that this world of the New 52 has a rich history. Demon Knights was one of them. It's a good reference in that series. That's what I wish they'd never canceled, because I really liked that one. It's too bad that the numbers didn't support it, I guess. That's the reason why it was canceled. Yeah, because, if it was doing big numbers, they would have kept it. What a shame, though, because I really enjoyed that book.
Yeah.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
I want to shout out our show voicemail line. We had a couple great phone calls on this episode. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of our show, and as you saw on this one, the voicemails kind of drove the way we handled the discussion, so thanks a lot to the guys who called into the show on this particular episode. We have a RagingBullets.com website where I post updates on where the show is headed, when release dates are going to be, progress and status on where the show is at, because we value you and we want to communicate with you where we're at so you have an idea of when you might expect a new episode. So definitely check that out. It does feed Twitter. It also feeds our Facebook page, the regular Raging Bullets Facebook page. We have a Raging Bullets Facebook group that we share with DCinfinite.com, and it's a wonderful community that's grown so far beyond our podcast. The conversations that go on there, I just love checking out the conversations that are going on because they're about all of pop culture and comics, and we've got just such great people up there that will post when the new release dates are up and reactions to release dates and new books that people have been reading. It's a wonderful, safe community that's about just having a good time as fans, and I really just appreciate that community, so I wanted to shout that out. We're available on Google Plus as well, so whatever social media you're looking for, you can find our show, and we love having you a part of everything that we do. Jim, we mentioned at the beginning that there is Apama, the Undiscovered Animal Kickstarter, and be sure to check that out and support Ted Sikora. There's a wonderful video on there explaining what Apama is. So if you're newer to the show and you've never heard of it before, you definitely want to check that out. It's cool. It spins out of the movie Hero Tomorrow. I shouldn't say spins out of it, though. It's kind of a multiverse story, so to speak, because Hero Tomorrow had its own version, but then they took the concept and made it into a comic, and the comic is completely independent of the movie. But yet, if you've seen both, there's kind of this cool energy that goes on. So definitely support the Kickstarter. It's got 29 days to go, and they have a really small goal. So it's great to know that this one will get out there. I wanted the hardcover of this one just because the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. The story's great. We're big fans, and I really appreciate them putting our podcast in their opening video of it. It was a nice shout out to our show. Sponsoring us once again is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, it's that time of the month. Be sure to check them out for the brand new deals that are coming from DCBService.com. Remember, they are a digital partner with Comixology or My Digital Comics. And if you link those accounts to your DCB Service account, you earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. Please consider doing your digital shopping with them because they are proud supporters of podcasts. And go over to our website, click on the handy-dandy links, and let them know that you stopped by our show. Over at InStockTrades.com, they are running all kinds of deals all month, including the Forever Evil hardcover that I mentioned at the beginning. They have a thank you sale number 2, where what they're doing is 10 regular books and 2 kids books at a 50% off discount. So there's like Batman trade paperback volume 4, 0 Year Secret City. That's a $16.99 trade paperback, 50% off, only $8.49. So there's just amazing deals like that on there. Justice League Beyond 2.0 Power Struggle, the trade paperback, $16.99, 50% off, only $8.49. Again, these are just great ways. Look at that. So now that's 2 for 1. For those trade paperbacks, if you're getting both of them. If you're on a budget and you're trying to maximize your reading, it's a really great way to do it, and you're sponsoring a website that does such a nice job of supporting so many podcasts. So I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Jim, we actually have 2 episodes that we're going to be sharing with our audience coming up. One of them is going to be on the Robert E. Howard's, I should say, Savage Sword, number 9 from Dark Horse. And we are joined by Jim Mitchell and longtime friend of the show, Freddie E. Williams II, to discuss their work on the Conan short story in that book. We recorded this a while back, actually, and finally have the opportunity, now that the book's released, to share that with you. So that's going to be coming up. We also have an episode coming up that we're going to be recording with Art Lyon, where we're going to take a look at the recent episodes of Gotham. We're going to take a look at if by the time we do the recording, if there's any Flash or Green Arrow episodes out. I think we might be able to sneak one of those shows in before we do the recording. I'm not sure how that's going to work because we're recording it next week. We're going to be discussing fall TV, what we've seen, how we feel about what we've seen, but also our hopes with where all of these series are going, because besides those 3 that I just mentioned, we've got a lot of DC material coming between like Constantine and iZombie. There's going to be a lot of series coming out that we're going to really want to discuss, and our own feelings on where they're going. So it's going to be kind of our fall preview, but also review of some of the cool material that's been out. I'm excited. It's a really good time to be a fan. So we will see you next week.
Bye.
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Seguin. Sometime earlier, Seguin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can 2 grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Seguin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.